We're solving a problem here in which we're simplifying a fairly complicated looking, daunting fraction, 1 plus 1 over x over 1 minus 1 over x. What I hear from a lot of students when they see a problem like this is that they have no idea how to solve it. They get kind of overwhelmed, and then they just choose something that looks kind of right to them. You don't want to approach it that way. Instead, approach it piece by piece and be confident that you can deal with each one of these terms on its own and eventually get to a simpler answer. So let's start with 1 plus 1 over x in our numerator. I'm going to write out the whole fraction here. We're just going to focus on our numerator here, 1 plus 1 over x. Okay, when we are combining terms that are added, when we're adding fractions together, they need to have a common denominator. So instead of dealing with 1, let's make 1 into x over x so that we can add it to 1 over x. Okay, this looks simple, or it looks more complicated now, but it's going to be simpler. X over x plus 1 over x. That's going to, and I'm going to deal with the denominator in a moment here. Okay, so we've got x over x plus 1 over x. Well, what does that equal? That equals x plus 1 over x, because they have the same denominator. Right? So when you're adding fractions, you add the numerators and then you put them all over their common denominator. Now we're going to do the same thing down in our denominator here, 1 minus 1 over x. Now that we have a template for it, it's pretty simple. We turn our 1 into x over x, we subtract 1 over x, and that equals x minus 1 over x. Okay, so this looks almost like it's getting more complicated now, or it's certainly not any simpler, but we're getting there. Okay, and I'm not doing this because I have an idea of the last step that I need to take. I'm just taking each thing one piece at a time. I see that I have fractions added to numbers that are to whole numbers, right? And so in order to combine those effectively, I need to give them a common denominator. So that's the first thing that I did. I'm not worried about whether it looks a little more complicated now. Now what I have is a fraction divided by a fraction. I have x plus 1 over x divided by x minus 1 over x. And this is another place where I see students getting daunted pretty often. If you don't remember how to divide a fraction by a fraction, it can seem impossible. It's actually quite simple. When you have a fraction divided by a fraction, okay, a over b divided by c over d, for example, all you do is you multiply the fraction in the numerator by the reciprocal of the fraction in the denominator. What does that mean? It means flip and multiply. A over b times d over c. So see how we flipped the c over d to a d over c? And we made it a over b times d over c. So that is equal to ad over bc. We're just multiplying the numerator across and the denominator across. Okay? So we're going to do the same thing here. X plus 1 over x times, flip the numerator and multiply, times x over x minus 1. Okay. So x plus 1 over x times x over x minus 1. So now we still have two fractions. How do we get them into 1? Well, when we're multiplying a fraction, look up here, you just multiply across the numerator and denominator. So that means that x plus 1 over x times x over x minus 1 is equal to x plus 1 times x over x times x minus 1. Now we're looking like we have something that we can deal with here to get our last step, because we have an x in the numerator and an x in the denominator that are just multiplied by another term, so we can actually cancel those, and we get x plus 1 over x minus 1. And that is one of our answer choices. So you can see that I didn't know that that's what I was going to end up with. If I knew it was what I was going to end up with, I could have just chosen it. But I did know that I could get rid of my 1's, combine my terms here, and then flip and multiply. And once I flipped and multiplied, I had terms that I could cancel. And so that left me with my final answer. So I just took it one step at a time.